So now they change up this thing, you know. Okay. Today is a new day. I have to give thanks for life. Let's see what we can get into today. Welcome, welcome one and all. Hope everybody having a great week. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining the live. As you know, it is always lawful, always. You see me? We're gonna get into some unconventional wisdom today. You know, I always come with the sauce. So I hope everybody is ready to get into it lawfully. You know, there are so many people that reach out every so often with questions, comments, and concerns. And like I always explain, I cannot help anybody. I can teach you, I can show you the law, I can give you ideas, but I cannot be your legal counsel. I cannot walk you through your entire situation. I don't have the time to actually do something like that, like a one-on-one mentor. And no, if you want to come to class, when we have class and you want to learn more, you come to voiceofjamaica.com and you become a signatory. Other than that, I am not here to do anybody's work for them. See? You go to school, you have to learn by your own. So, unfortunately, for those who are looking for somebody to do things for them, this is not that gate. So try another door. Attorneys are all over the place, you know. There are quite a few of them on TikTok. So, if you don't want to learn, if you don't want to do it by yourself, then there are attorneys all over the place, right? But if you want to learn the basics, if you want to learn some detail about how you can exercise your rights, how you can protect yourself, your family, your property, if you really want to take the time out to learn, the classes are there. The classes are on voiceofjamaica.com. Only for signatories. It is not for lazy people who just want to run through and find a quick fix. So, I urge you, greetings, greetings. I urge you to take the time to learn for yourself. Because if you don't learn for yourself, you're going to have to pay somebody who learned for themselves. And that is how this world works. If you can't do it for yourself, you have to pay for somebody else to do it for you. Or pay for somebody else to walk you in that darkness. You see it? So you have to make a choice. Either you do it or you pay someone to do it. And that is often what it comes down to. Society is the same, the courts are the same, the government is the same, the arms of government is the same, so you can't escape it. Either you learn or you pay for your ignorance, right? Take for example, matter of fact, that is a good example. Let us take for example the Customs Act, right? I hear people all the time that say, customs I rip off people, customs I do this, customs I charge you for something where you buy already and pay tax pan. I mean I say, yeah, complain. Exactly. Pay money or pay attention, that's true. I say for example, right? It's not like say the Customs Act is not accessible. All you have to do is go into Google and type in Customs Act Jamaica. That's it. Customs Act Jamaica. Road Traffic Act Jamaica. Road Traffic Regulation Jamaica. Anything you want to look for, you go to Google and you type it in and you type Jamaica next to it. So, even in the Customs Act, people don't realize it lays out the details of what customs can charge you for. So if you are somebody who is purchasing items overseas and shipping them to Jamaica, right? You have to know how to handle customs. You have to know how to interact with them. You have to know how to communicate with them, because if you don't even know the purpose of customs, they are going to beat you over the head. You're going to pay out of your nose. So you can't complain when them are used for them knowledge upon you. You have to come up to speed. You have to come up to speed and use your brains. The Customs Act is what? 867 pages. This is one of the largest legislations out there. And you know what it is primarily for? Businesses. Nothing in the Customs Act talk about private people. Nothing talk about the people of Jamaica. Nothing talk about any personal thing where you see in there. It is related to a business, a legal fiction. It has nothing to do with you. But you see, because you're not going to try to read the 867 pages. You're not even going to skim through it and say, boy, let me see if we can look and see what is exempt. Even that, something exempt, right? The man now look and I read them something and I say, boy, yo, 800 and something page, I don't have time to read that. And that time where you don't have to read it, that is the time that you're going to have to pay for. So when you go to the wharf, and when you come through the airport and then dig you up and then charge you, you can't complain. Because you are walking in ignorance. You just walk and a hope and a pray, so they don't stop you. You walk and a hope and a pray, so they don't find the electronic device where you have. Because you hope and pray in a ignorance. And the ignorance is always something that it is expensive to pay for. Yeah, man, you have to go look it up. Because as I said, with any legislation, any act of parliament, legal jargon that throws them off because they don't understand. It is not the legal jargon, I can tell you that. 100% it is not the legal jargon. It is the volume of information they have to read. So they hiding behind the legal jargon, that is not the primary reason. And I can prove that 100%. Anybody who claim that, You ask them what legal words you didn't understand and watch how them start stutter. How do you get rid of a TRN, a taxpayer registration number? Well, I can answer the question, but a counter question is, why would you want to get rid of it? I get this question before, and you have to look at a broader picture. You have to pull things apart and open it up to be free. You have to open things apart to understand what some of these things are. Okay? If you go and you take certain actions, it can be detrimental to your operating in society. Right? So while some things might sound good, something might sound like, yes, I don't want to be a part of the system. I don't want to be oppressed. I don't want to this. I don't want to that. That is legitimate, That is overstandable. However, you have to keep in mind that you may not understand what you are doing with the tool, and therefore you find it to be having a negative impact on you. Now, to answer the question directly, how do you get rid of a TRN? It is actually rather easy. You go to the tax office and you bring back the card and you ask for a revocation form. I know this sounds strange, but they most likely have a revocation form. If they say they don't have it, you ask them, how can I cancel this number? Right? The people them with in a tax office, they most likely don't know. You ask for your supervisor and you tell them exactly what you want to do. You do not want the number anymore and you would like to ensure that the number is disposed of. See? So once you do that, then you can effectively nullify that. However, they will not cancel it if you have debt. They will not cancel it if you have a suspended driver's license. They will not cancel it for a myriad of things. So all of your affairs need to be in order first. That is, anything that is tied to the TRN, it has to be in a positive status before you go about trying to get rid of it. Otherwise, that will not work. Is the TRN system oppressive? It can be considered that way, but in and of itself, no, it is not. You just might not know how to properly use it, so you find it negative or having a negative impact on you. Of course, there is always a way to get a passport, because the passport is tied to the Constitution, right? The Constitution guarantees that everyone has the freedom to enter and leave Jamaica. So what that mean? That means that you can go out on the waters, or you can go out by plane, or you can go out by helicopter, you can go out by whatever. So by whatever means that is necessary, you have the right to demand that the government facilitate that. So in that sense, you can cite the constitutional guarantee or the constitutional protection that allows any citizen of Jamaica, which is someone born here or someone who inherits citizenship, to be able to get a passport without a TRN if they are requiring you get a TRN, right? You demand the law that requires you to get a TRN. There is no such law. No such law. And they cannot force you to get a TRN. The right to move about freely and leave and enter Jamaica cannot be abridged unless you are convicted of a crime. Without a birth certificate and not be registered. That's correct. You don't need to be registered or have a birth certificate. You can still get a passport without those things. The TRN is connected to tax paid in which can claim as your returns. In some cases, yes. In some cases, you can actually owe taxes if you didn't pay enough based on your employment. TRN is not gazette in the Constitution, only the Act. I don't know what that means, but if you look in the Constitution, TRN is not in the not gazette in the Constitution, only the Act. Right, the TRN is not described in the Constitution. That is correct, if that's what you mean. The TRN is something that is, it's a government option. It's just like a voter's ID. It is not mandatory. It is something that you can get, but it is not mandated that you must have it to do something. Right? But many people are always gonna say, well, if me not have this, then me can't do that. That is not true. It is just that you don't know how to do it without some of those other tools. And you don't know what rights you have. Because if you know what rights you had, you would not be saying some of these things. If you know how to enforce your rights, you would not be saying these things. You go to the tax office and ask. If you go to the tax office, you ask for the supervisor. Whoever is the manager, supervisor, I don't know, whatever. Just ask for somebody that is in management. And you tell them you would like to dispose of a TRN. You bring the card back and you let them know you like to dispose of it, so you would like to revoke the number. You no longer want to be associated with the number. And they will give you proper directions. Again, you might want to reconsider doing something like that. But, I mean, everybody have the option, right? You don't have to. But if you want to, you can go ahead and do that. But it would probably be better if you learn how to properly use it rather than get rid of it, or how to restrict it rather than get rid of it. But, you know, if you're tired of it and you don't want to have nothing to do with it, then hey, the option is there as well. Same thing with the driver's license. Some people don't want it because they realize it comes with the contract of the Road Traffic Act and regulations and all of that. Right? Without the driver's license, the Road Traffic Act cannot be enforced. What does that mean? I know people are going to say, man, you talk crap, they can enforce the Road Traffic Act and regulations no matter what. Well, if you notice, if you go through the Road Traffic Act and regulations, it talks about the holder of a driver's license. Justin, lawful, always. The holder of a driver's license requires you to have a validly issued driver's license, right? Now, if you, all right, so just like we talked about the TRN just now, if you voluntarily return or voluntarily surrender, that is the proper legal terminology. If you voluntarily surrender the TRN, right, that is completely different from it being expired or from it being under some other condition, right? The driver's license is the same. If you voluntarily surrender the driver's license, you are now basically canceling it, right? It no longer can be used as a status within the system. For example, the driver's license can be what? Suspended, it can be revoked, it can be restricted, it can be all sorts of different things, points or whatever. But when you voluntarily surrender it, it can no longer be modified in that fashion. Meaning, them can't suspend it once you have surrendered it. They cannot restrict it once you have surrendered. Once you surrender it, it has now become inactive. It has been cancelled in the system because it is not attached to anyone anymore. So this requires you to go back and recontract with the government in order to reactivate that driver's license contract, which most people won't do. If you get to that stage where you understand how to do that, you wouldn't go back into that contract, right? Because most likely you would have you would have figured out what you want to do, why you voluntarily surrender a government issued document, right? Hopefully you thought about that and what you would be doing after you've done that, right? So these things these tools of the government are not necessarily bad. It is just that people don't know how to actually do these things or how to use it to your benefit. That is where people fall short, right? It is not attached to a corporate body once you give it up. That is correct. There are different layers of attachment that happens with those kinds of contracts. It is not necessarily just because it's not attached to a corporate body. It is funneled through a lot of layers, right? User 14 say, I don't want to have a contract with the government. Well, it is entirely possible, but it actually makes things very difficult if you truly want to achieve that. See? Scorpion King, lawful, always up. It is truly difficult to operate in regular society without having some sort of government contract, right? TRN is a corporate way, man, not sovereign and free to roam, man. Well, I don't subscribe to that Freeman methodology. I fully comprehend what that methodology or theory is about. However, it is rather dangerous if you don't consider other things outside of that. Because here's the thing. It doesn't matter what theory you subscribe to if you don't comprehend the full breadth and length of how these things might interconnect with other things within society. For example, if we have, let's say we have someone that says, you know something, I don't want a driver's license. I don't want no voter's ID. I don't want a TRN. I don't want no birth certificate. I don't want no passport. I don't want nothing at all with the government issue. Nothing at all. Right? No, that comes with a level of freedom, right? However, if you want to go to the hospital, right? You need some sort of ID. They need to sign you up. They need to figure out whatever. If you don't have any of these contracts, right, you can be refused some of these services. Not to say it is right, but that is what is going to happen. When you go to the bank is going to say, well, we require you to have ID to do certain things. You want to change a name on an account, you want to open another account, you want to do this, you want to do that. The bank is going to refuse you services. You try to do anything within any connected, through any connected corporate entity, you are going to be facing challenges. Now, there are ways to work around some of that, but it is going to bring about more strife and struggle, at least in the beginning years of when you try to start doing some of these things. So, not that it is impossible, right? But also, it is going to cause strife and problems for you to get certain things done, especially if you have children and other things, household things to deal with. You're going to fall into some issues, right? Now, some people don't mind taking taxi. They don't want to travel around in a car. They don't want to do certain things. So, you're fine there. But when you want to use some of these other services that might be available, it might prove to be challenging. And I don't advocate for anyone to do that unless you can really be self-sufficient. If you don't really need to interact with society like that, right? Trying to get a job or trying to do even some contract work sometimes require you to have some ID. Right? Some people don't want to deal in a cash, they want to send something to your bank account. What you gonna do? If you get rid of your TRN and all those things and you have an account, you better make sure, I know you alone have access to it, because it can cause you some grave problems when it comes down to it, if you have a problem and you need to use an ID for whatever or use the number for something. So Again, I'm not say don't do it. I'm just saying you have to consider other factors before you go about doing some of these things. And you have to think beyond your decision, right? If you decide, say, I don't want a government ID, none at all. You have to now think about how you're going to do some of these other things that you're used to. How are you going to achieve them? Right? So if you're okay with it, then hey, go right ahead. Another thing you can do is, if you don't want to even go through the tax office and all of that, you can draft up a notice of voluntary surrender and revocation. Right? And a document like that, you would simply list whatever it is that you're revoking. You send it back to the head of the government agency. So if you have the driver's license, you would send it back to the what do you call that? It's not coming to me right now, but either way, you can send it back to the tax administration office, right? You send back the actual license, you send the notice with it, and you mail it off with a courier service that they have to sign for it. Once they sign for it and you have the record of that, you're good to go. You save that record. So in case it comes up later on where they might say, well, this is not cancelled or whatever, you can show that you sent this thing back, you sent the notice, and you gave instructions that your intention is to cancel this thing from the date of receipt. And you're done. Right? Of course, you know, with all of the things that are around us, they don't tell us how to cancel these contracts. All they do is tell you how to get into them. So it is up to you to figure out, how do I get rid of this thing? The primary way to do it is to return the physical thing back. Right? Once you return it, then you ask for a receipt. Right? You need something in writing to show that you returned it. You ask for the receipt and you make sure you keep that receipt, whether in digital form or physical form, but you keep that receipt. So if it ever comes up in the future where they must say, well, this was active and you're responsible for it and all of them, something there, you have your evidence to show that it was returned and it was no longer your responsibility beyond that point. Right? If you had a child today, would you register them at birth? If yes, why? Yes, I would. And the reason is because I know how to handle these different commercial contracts and accounts. Okay, yeah, I mean, all of these contracts, whether it be a health card, your voter registration, your driver's license, any of them, you return them back to the issuing agency. That is how you go about it. You tell them you want to do a voluntary surrender and revocation of the item or of that contract or of that privilege, and that is final. You don't want to hear about why you're cancelling it, and that's my business. Them don't need to ask you a question. Your intention to come there is to return it and revoke it. No sit down and interview nothing. They don't need to ask you no question. It is your business why you are cancelling it, not theirs. They are public servants. They are not there to decide whether or not you can cancel the thing. Their duty is, if you go in there and say you want to cancel it, them get it done. That's it. It is not their duty to try to figure out why you cancel it or what can they do to let you keep it. No. Tell them no waste your time. You don't want to have a conversation. You don't want to be interviewed. You don't want to be coerced into keeping something that you come there to cancel. Right? You can cancel everything. Anything that you get, you can revoke it. In commerce, I really get to that side typically on this platform. But in commerce, there is something called your right to unlimited contracting. What that means is you can get up and you can go sign for something every single day. You can get up and go fill out a contract, agree to something, to sign something, make an agreement with somebody in the streets without signing nothing. your right to unlimited interaction with people or entities is unlimited, right? Nobody can stop you from doing that. Right, then give a form to fill out to sign up, but they don't tell you how to sign out, right? And that is critical, and that shows you again that some of these things are what's called adhesion contracts or unconscionable contracts, right? So it is done without full disclosure. It is done without open ends. It is done without mutual benefit. So if a contract is only benefiting one side, it is called an unconscionable contract, because no sensible person, if given the choice, would allow someone else to siphon off their energy or their resources or their property without compensation. And that is exactly what the government is doing in many cases. Well, honestly speaking, Jamaica. All right, we said 2026. If you ask a question, I'm going to answer, right? Jamaica is no different to navigate than the US. It is just that in Jamaica, a lot of things are slowed down because Jamaica is moving at such a fast pace. People don't recognize it, you know. People don't realize that America and UK is not moving fast. It's just that you don't realize what's happening. Jamaica is moving way faster than the US or UK or some of these other countries. Why do I say that? If you take a look at many things, for example, technology, right? We have computers, we have cameras, we have we have access to everything that the US have, that the UK have, that other parts of the Caribbean have, that even Dubai has. We in Jamaica have access to everything. So ask yourself this question. If Jamaica has access to all of the technological resources that the rest of the world has, how come our laws and our processes appear to be so slow? How come? It is not like we are speaking a foreign language. The whole of we speak English. So it is how fast the brain is moving. In the control structure in Jamaica, they realize that if people were to be on the same level as the US, the UK, or some of these other more technologically, they say technologically advanced, but that is not a correct terminology. If the people in Jamaica were given the same opportunities to interface with the government, to access technology and to do so many different, we already have access to the technology, you know, but the government put a limit on it. It's almost like you have a river and somebody come and put one funnel so the river can only let out this much instead of open up and allow everything to flow. So it is not that Jamaica is slow. It is because those who are controlling the flow of how things work are narrowing things down so much. So it appears that Jamaica is backwards. It appears that Jamaica don't have all of these different options available like these other countries. But in truth and in fact, what can Jamaica not access? The people in Jamaica have the same phone like the other countries. We have the same cars like the other countries. We have the same computers like the other countries. We all access the same internet as the other countries. What is different? Tell me. The only thing that's different is the control structure. The control structure. So the laws that are being put in place, the application of the Constitution, and the people who are defining how the law works. And I talked about this before. So what them say, we're supposed to be a third world country. We are a third world country. Jamaica is a third world country. Jamaica passed World 1, Jamaica passed World 2, and now we're up here, so we're a third world. All of them, the other one, them there at the bottom. Right? It is how you look at it. They are not incorrect. It is just that people have the mindset that just because the US or the UK or this other country or that other country might have convenience, like them fix the road them. They actually fix the road them, so them not have the potholes in many places. You know, they have they build up their hospitals. They actually have insurance scheme and all those things that benefit the people in many cases. Not in all cases, you know. Not in all cases. So Jamaica is no different. Jamaica have so much riches to this day that even if the people don't know it, those who are managing the riches, they know they cannot access it directly. They cannot access the riches directly, but they siphon it off, just like how them siphon off all of the other energy and resources that the people have. Right? So it is just a matter of understanding these things. It is not necessarily that they are all inherently bad. It's just that you're always going to have people who, when they have this kind of power, and it's not really power, it is just knowledge. When people have certain kind of knowledge and they realize other people don't have it, they take advantage. They try to block off the roadway now. Nobody else now come over here, so because they don't want everybody to see, say, like people are starving over there, so and over here, so you have plenty food. For some reason, many people who get into power, they don't want nobody else to elevate. They want people to continue to suffer and suffer and suffer. And I can't find a justification in it. Right? But hey, it is happening, so we have to deal with it. Right? So, let us talk about a couple of things. Right? Let us talk about the Constitution. Why do we even have a Constitution? Again, you see, conversations like these, it requires us to get to a level where we're not thinking about hand to mouth and we're not thinking about just tomorrow. We have to think ahead. So, when we talk about the Constitution, right, we have to go into the mind of when this thing was being created, when this thing was put into place, the current one. What was happening? What were they trying to do when they instituted the current Constitution, the one that was ratified in 1962? And to do that, you have to go back to political times. You have to go back to who were the crafters, who were involved in it, and what process it took to actually get the Constitution in effect in Jamaica. For those of you who followed me for a long time, I talk about the Constitution being a framework. And I'm going to get a little bit deeper today on what I mean by the Jamaica Constitution, Order in Council 1962, is still a framework even today. All of the laws that we have in Jamaica are colonial styled laws. What does that mean? It means that when the Constitution was created, what it did not want to happen is the people at the time did not want to start over from scratch. When Jamaica gained independence, it was not the Constitution that granted the independence. It is not the Constitution that allowed for the independence. The independence happened and then the Constitution was put in place after. Right? So the Constitution was put in place so that Jamaica wouldn't have political anarchy, and the people themselves were primarily shut out of lawmaking processes. So there weren't many educated, like really political educated people in Jamaica at that time. And why do I say this? Because again, slavery was abolished a long time, but the colonial power structure remained in place. So when the Constitution was being drafted and put in place, they had to use a template. They had to use something that was working before. They didn't know what a constitution was. They didn't know what's supposed to be in it. They didn't know how the government's supposed to run. None of that. So some of the colonial powers were still here in Jamaica. And when those colonial powers stayed to ensure a smooth transition of government so that the country would understand how government is supposed to run. Once that was achieved, the colonial powers were supposed to completely exit. How do I know that? And how can we prove that? If we go to the Constitution, right? It says that all of the laws that were in force and effect before the Constitution got activated is still the laws that are active after the Constitution was active and put in place. You don't believe me? You think I true me talk? I will give you one example that would have affected many people already. The Road Traffic Act. The Road Traffic Act was in place before we had the current Constitution. Right, the Constabulary Force Act as well. The Interpretation Act was in force and effect before the Constitution. So these are colonial documents, colonial rules, colonial laws that are being enforced. Still in force and effect today. From the 1900s, from the 1800s, all the way up to now, we're in a 2020 something. So these are still colonial remnants that are protruding their way through time, affecting more than just the population at the time. So if the laws that were in force and effect before the Constitution was instituted, activated, and put in place, if all of those laws transition over, right, what is the point of a constitution then? That means it is not really the creation of a constitution, because a constitution was in place before then, This is not the first one. There was a constitution in place before the 1962 constitution, and there were many more before that. If you go and look up the history of Jamaican constitutions, you'll see they had many going all the way back to 16 and 1400s. So Jamaica had a long history of constitutional change based on the governors that were placed here. So the question is, if the Constitution was a true constitution, would we have adopted, that's really what it is, would we have adopted the laws, rules, and regulations that were colonially based? The answer is obviously no. If these things were coming from the time when people considered brown people in Jamaica to be less human, or to not have certain rights, or to not have certain freedoms, or not to be free, then it would not make sense for us to continue to have those laws that were tied to that history. It would have made sense for us to cut all ties with colonial history and start afresh, start new, create something that is by us, for us. But that is not what happened, right? So now, here is another kicker. The Constitution itself tells us it is a framework. What do I mean by that? I'm going to pull it up so that you can take a look at it. And now I'm actually going to go to the original document, right? So that we can speak in context. So you can see for yourself and not just what I am saying. So we have Charter of Fundamental Rights. One second. I'm gonna pull it up so that we can all read together and see what I mean. When I say the Constitution was only a framework, right? I'm gonna put this now. Let me find it. I know I had it open enough. This is the charter, which we already had open. All right, let me do a Google search for, because I know I had it open the other day. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Here we go. All right, let us bring the computer into play so that you can see for yourself what this document says. All right, so let us flip the camera and let us zoom in on this document. Okay, so here we have the Jamaica Order in Council 1962. Now, I have explained this before many times. You see, anything you see in brackets, it means that it is like a comment. It is like a commentary. It is like a reference point. It is not a part of the original document. And for those of you who keep on questioning this, so why do they have it there? Because it is a framework. It is only referencing something related to what should be, right? It is like a description of what should be. But it is telling you, it didn't say the Jamaica Constitution and it stopped. Not only did it not stop, it put Constitution in brackets. So that means that it is not a part of the original text. But let's not stop there. It says Order in Council 1962. Okay? So here's the question. Why do we need an order to create a constitution? if the constitution is supposed to be created by the newly instituted government, because the power is now shifting, from colonial to sovereign. Jamaica is supposed to be its own sovereign power. But this is actually an order coming from the English crown. So this in itself is not an actual constitution. Just like if you look at constitution in the United States, it don't say the United States Constitution, Order and Council, blah, blah, blah. No, a matter of fact, I think it is only the Caribbean countries that still have this in place, right? Where you have the constitution in brackets, because they still do not have an actual constitution. This is only a reference. And when you go through this thing here, you see it say section 3.2 of the Order and Council and section 80 blah 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 blah. Right? Remainder immediately before. So this is something that is a framework. It is a shell. It is something that is there as an example, so that if and when the people become cognizant enough and want to actually create a constitution, they have a reference point. They have something they can use as a reference to build what they feel to be in their best interest. Right? So it shows you how to arrange the constitution. It shows you how to create the different sections. Right? And look at this. Order in council revoked by this order. Right? Second schedule, Constitution of Jamaica. The Jamaica Constitution, Order in Council 1962. And they go on and on and on and on. Right? This order, you see what it says? This order may be cited as the Jamaica, in bracket, Constitution, Order in Council 1962. So even if you did not believe the title that was up there, here they are stating it again. Just like in any act of parliament, it says what? This may be cited as, it says this order may be cited as. So it is not an inherent constitution. It is something still coming from the colonial powers. Okay? So this is not a native constitution. This is something that is there as a placeholder. It is a placeholder until the Jamaican people become smart enough or become resilient enough and ready to create their own constitution. Okay? So I hope that makes sense as it concerns what is the actual constitution and what it's for. It was there as a placeholder. So we still, to this talk, to this day, we still to this day do not have a native constitution. We still have a colonial constitution and we have colonial acts of parliament and so forth. Right? And again, the reason why it was created was because the crown did not want to just leave and then put the people in jeopardy, because as with any society, if you don't have laws, rules, and regulations, there's going to be a rising faction of power. And that is often brutal. Not that we don't have brutality going on now, but we don't want gangsters running the place. Isn't it? We need some kind of order. So that is why they did not just get up and leave. Rankovic, Wagwan. No, I didn't say that. I said I do not schedule the lives anymore. I don't tell people when I am going to go live, because those who believe they are in power, they send their minions over here to report the live when I am not doing anything other than just going over public information. Right? You see? You see, as me said that so, it says some comments in the live are filtered. What comment filtered now? Anyways. So, We had constitutions before, and now we still have a constitution that is still colonial based. So the question now is, what is the constitution for? Right? Because the constitution say it has all kind of protections being offered to people, the people of the island. All kind of protections, all kind of limits, all kind of boundaries, all kind of things. So the question is, the protection that is in the constitution. Let me pull it up. Let us pull up the protections, right? Go here. You see? The minions are back. Welcome, agents. Let me start reporting live. Nonetheless, we are going to continue. Zin? So, let us take a look at the Constitution and see what it says. So, Chapter 3 says, protection of freedom of the person, protection of property rights, protection of right to due process, protection of freedom of religion. Right? So, who are we being protected from? That is a serious question, you know, because all of these protections are here, and people often say, you know, you have your constitutional rights, don't make them violate your constitutional rights, and them run around and them go around with this nonsense. Constitutional rights. Where here so does it say you have any rights being granted? Even here so it says fundamental rights and freedoms. It still does not grant anybody any rights. It offers protection. You cannot go beyond the plain language of these legislations or these laws. All right? If we go to due process, protection of the right to due process. All right? This all has to do with the government. This all has to do with the government. It says, whenever any person is charged with a criminal offense, so any kind of crime that you're being charged with, you have to get due process. But the problem is, if you don't claim due process, if you don't claim any of these protections before you get arrested, it is hard to get due process, because you are now claiming the thing after the fact. So all of those notices that some of you might have seen me posting several months ago, that was a part of these constitutional protections. You have to claim a right in order to get the right, or in order to enforce the right. You cannot just get up so and I say you have rights. You have to actually make it be known on the record, documented. Yes, you can go in a court. Yes, you can try to say things, but you cannot retain everything in your head. And oftentimes you try to talk, they are going to try to shut you up in court. So the only other way for you to go is by notice. You put people on notice. You put the government on notice that you have these rights. Otherwise, you have none. All right? In determining, here is an important one. In the determination of a person's civil rights. Let me say that again. This is what? 16.2. In the determination of a person's civil rights. So, someone is determining whether or not you have claimed any rights. In the determination of a person's civil rights and obligations, or of any legal proceedings which may result in a decision adverse to his interest, he shall be entitled to a fair hearing within a reasonable time by an independent and impartial court or authority established by law. This is one of the most important parts of the protection. Why? Because almost all of us have interacted with the police one way, shape, or form, claiming that we violate the law. Right? But the important thing here is, if you have not declared that you had any rights, there is no determination to be made of what civil rights you have. It is after the fact, and the only thing you can claim is a violation of the Constitution. You cannot claim a violation of any right that you did not claim. If you did not give public notice, what kind of right you claim? So, you have the right to due process. And due process has what? I think 12 clauses. 12 paragraphs of due process that you have. But if you don't claim any of them, best believe the presumption is that you have waived all of your rights. You have waived all of these protections. You have waived all of these provisions of the Constitution that allow you the protections. Here it says, no person shall be held guilty of any criminal offense. Again, this is from government, don't. The government alone can initiate criminal process. No person shall be held guilty of any criminal offense on account of any act or omission which did not, at the time it took place, constitute a criminal offense. So for those of you who keep thinking that a traffic ticket is not a criminal matter, all of these protections are in relation to criminal matters. And the police cannot initiate civil process. We already covered that in section 13 of the Constabulary Force Act. Section 13 specifically states the police shall not be employed for any civil process. So the only thing they can initiate are criminal processes. And just because they say offense instead of criminal offense, that does not mean that it is not criminal. Right? So, in order for anyone to use real constitutional provisions, you have to comprehend what it is that's in there. Right? So the protections that are offered in the Constitution, which is a framework, the Order in Council 1962, are from government. The framers of the Constitution knew that the government has too much power. The government has too much power. So the Constitution placed limits on those powers. As a matter of fact, the Constitution specifically states that the government and Parliament cannot make laws. The Constitution is, so, earlier when I say these acts of Parliament are not law, people up and down, I complain and I tell me say I foolish, me I talk, me I mislead the people, all kind of things me I hear. I say, did you actually read the thing? Right? It is not me saying that. Section 48 and Section 13(2)(b) states that Parliament shall pass no laws. And if they are going to pass any laws, it can only be in relation to Parliament. It is not supposed to be affecting the general population. If you're affecting the general population, that means that you are infringing on people's rights. Their civil rights, which are not described, because what? You cannot define what someone deems to be of good character or good value. Right? Someone might say, well, my house is my best asset. My child is my best whatever. Right? Everybody have a different idea of what they consider to be valuable. So your right to keep, maintain, and use, or to build up or to grow that thing is your right. That cannot be limited to only one thing, because everybody have different needs. But let's not get into that. So the protection that is offered by the Constitution is generally and mostly protection from the government. But we have not been using these provisions properly. Are the provisions in the Constitution and under protections? Is it civil or criminal? As we've just seen, it is almost all related to criminal matters. Right? Because the enforcement arm of the government typically loves to drag people into criminal processes. So that's why those protections are there. But it appears that the Constitution has been infiltrated. Because even in the constitutional courts, just because someone do not assert a defense, that does not mean they abandon the defense. Just because you don't make a claim right away, the courts can determine that, hey, or they have, in many cases, determined that, well, because you did not assert this right up front, then that means that you agree that you do not have that right, or you agree that you do not wish to use that right. And then they proceed to violate you further, which is a violation again of the Constitution. Because the Constitution said the judicial arm of the government, which is the courts, they can only interpret the law as it relates to the Constitution. And if they are interpreting the laws in violation of the Constitution, because the Constitution did not give them the power to say, just because you did not bring up that you have a right, that don't mean say you don't have it. But that is what the court is trying to say. So now you have these common law interpretations of the Constitution, which is a violation again. Nowhere in the Constitution will you find common law, but yet still, that is what the courts are using today. What is common law? Common law is simply previous orders issued by the court. They are now using that as the law, which is not correct. That is a violation of the Constitution, which is the source of their power. TRN is a prisoner number. That is not true. You just don't know how to use it properly. Or you may not choose to use it properly. It is not necessarily a prisoner number. So, when we talk about the Constitution and where it comes from, it sheds a lot of light on what is happening today. Because much of the problems that we have in society, for example, we have crime and violence, we have random police stops, we have poor health care, we have slow government services, we have no accountability, we have questionable elections, we have so-called money cannot be found, not only in the millions but in the billions. We have a lot of things that just seem to be colonial based. It is almost like we never left the colonial era. Because even today, where we have access to cameras, we have access to recordings, we have access to computer systems, we have access to all the beauties of technology. But the government is using only so much that they can keep records, but they cannot find where the money goes. They cannot find where the problem is. Every single year you hear people are dying because of shootings. Right? Beer Pew Pew. Oh, they were criminals. Oh, they got infiltrated. Oh, it was a battle. This, that, and the other. I talked about this before. You see, everything in society is a civil matter. Everything in society is a civil matter. The only thing that labels someone a criminal is by a court order. It is after they have gone through their due process. After you are afforded all of the provisions of due process, and you are now tried, and there is evidence to prove that you had committed a crime, that is the only time you are considered a criminal. Many people don't know that, you know. People keep on saying, well, him did a run from the police, him a criminal. That is not how the law works. Sometimes the police then catch somebody, right? Somebody a run down the street or whatever the case may be. Them catch them. And then start tell them, say, them a criminal. And then fi admit say them wrong. And then for this and them for that. Nobody is a criminal until you are actually convicted of a crime. So just because you hear say somebody do something, that does not make them a criminal. Just because somebody a run, that does not make them a criminal. Just because they have a weapon, that does not make them a criminal. The term criminal means they have gone through the process of criminal prosecution and it is found that they were guilty. So as bad as it seems, that term should be abolished in regular day society. That is not something that people should be using. You should say, well, that person was caught running. That person had a weapon. That person this. They should go to the courts. That's what we should be saying. But again, I know that some of us do not have confidence in the court system. And for good reason. If the courts were operating to the letter of the law, if they were operating from what the law actually says, people would love government. Just from the courts, even if tax office stay the same, even if they're still a thief, as people say. Me don't know. Me don't know if they're a thief. So me not say that. But even if most of the other things in a society stay the same right now as it is, if the court system fix, then I think many people in Jamaica would be happy. If the courts actually follow the Constitution and only prosecute people where they have enough evidence and the people then wasn't beaten and coerced and all them something by the police, and the actions of those who carry out wrongful things are actually charged properly and expeditiously brought to the court and given a fair hearing, I think that people would have more trust and happier with the government. Just by that one change. If the court is going to come up with their own rules, that means that the laws that we think that we are following, when we go to the court, we are no longer subjected to those laws. We are subjected to harsher, more changing and fluid laws that we don't know about. So now we are being charged on things that we have no clue. And that is wrong. How can we abide by the law if when we go to court, the judge is going to say, well, that's not what Parliament intended. That is not what it is supposed to be interpreted to be, and we are going to interpret it this way. How can we then follow the law when we don't know what's in the judge's brain? It is horrible. And this is not just Jamaica. This happens in the US too, the UK, much part of the Caribbean. I'm not saying every single judge does this. Not saying every single judge, but most of the cases that are decided, especially when they go to the Court of Appeals, you have these non-constitutional decisions that are being made that are contrary to the rule of law. Common law has no place in a society that has statutory laws written down by Parliament or by the legislature. Common law only comes into play when something is ambiguous, something don't make sense. So you fall into an area of law that the statute does not cover, right? If you have a situation where the law doesn't cover it, then you can say, okay, we have to use common law here. because the law does not cover this situation. So we're going to use what were the previous rulings and what did we say in this situation. Then that's fine. 100% agree. But if you have the letter of the law in front of you and you are going to deviate, well, we decided this before and that before and that before. That is categorically wrong. Categorically wrong. Right? So, the Constitution, again, is only a framework. We as Jamaicans have not taken the time to learn about the law enough to demand that we be a part of the constitutional process. Almost all of the law that is being enforced in Jamaica are being enforced as laws. I can't think of any law in Jamaica that involve the people. All of the laws are created in Parliament and they are done behind closed doors. I have never seen any part of government come on TV or come on the radio or come on the internet or anywhere and say, you know, we are drafting this legislation. We would like to get the public's input and we would like to see what exactly the public would like to see implemented with these regulations so that we can incorporate them in the laws that we are creating. Never, ever. Never, ever. Why? Because it's really none of our business. The acts of parliament are for parliament. That's why it is called an act of parliament. It never say an act of people. It never say the law of people. It is never say, for example, they never say the road traffic law, right? They never say the constabulary law. It is all an act. And when you have acts of parliament are only relevant to parliament. But because you don't know this, you sit down there or you stand there cowering because you feel you have no power. And when you don't assert or enforce your right, as a matter of fact, you don't even know that you have certain rights, and you let the institutions run over you, it is nobody's fault. Unfortunately, it is nobody's fault because it is not something hidden. You just have to read. You don't read, those that read are always going to have the advantage. That is the problem. If you don't read, those that read are going to have the advantage over you mentally. And they will use it. They certainly will use it. Mr. Billionaire, big up yourself. So, how do we even fix any of those problems? Fixing those problems is not an easy thing. It's not something that you can just get up and fix. These are not get up and fix problems. And these are not violence problems. These are intelligent and intellectual problems. There are so many smart people in Jamaica, but they don't pay attention to foolishness. They are focused on life. They are focused on other things around them. Right? And oftentimes, if they get into problems, they know how to fix it. So, why bother with the general population if it appears that people just want to make noise and be entertained? In order for us to make change, we need to come together as a people. It don't have to be everybody. It's just like church, you know. I know everybody got church. It's for those who find it to be beneficial. So if you find something to be beneficial, You try to be a part of a group. You try to be a part of something in society that come together as a people. That's what you do. Without that, an individual cannot make collective change. It has to be collective making collective change. Right? So, I have an experiment. Right? If you want change, right? You know, change requires action. We cannot expect change by sitting and looking, sitting and watching and listening and being non-active. Because if you sit and look, no matter how powerful you think your brain is, your brain is only going to be so powerful as it relates to you. It is not going to influence people out there like that. So if you want change, you have to take some kind of action. Right? Well, user 14, everybody is entitled to their own beliefs. And maybe that works for you, so that's great. But that doesn't work for everybody. But I want love same way. You see it? So, if we want change, we have to learn to take incremental action. Take action little by little. You can't just sit down so and watch. Nothing is going to change by sitting and watching. So, here's what I propose. For those of you who are on the live, go to voiceofjamaica.com. See? On voiceofjamaica.com, there is a menu, right? There is an item on the right that I have a voting poll. You see it? So you go here on the website. If you're on the phone, you scroll all the way down until you see the voting section. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Right? If you think that Jamaica is a good place and not no need for change, you put a thumbs up. If you don't like the way the country is run, or if you think the laws need to change, the courts need to change, the politics need to change, you vote thumbs down. Right? The question is, as a Jamaican, are you comfortable with the way the country is run? The price of items, the opportunities, the society, the laws, the courts, the politics. Do you like how all these things are being run? Right? And you answer thumbs up or thumbs down. You don't need to sign up for nothing. You don't need to input no information. It's just a simple voting. You see, we have 12 people already who actually go out there and vote. Right? So, I want to hear your opinion. I want to see what you think. Because, let us see what people vote so far. So far, we have 3 people who think that the country is running great. And we have 13 people who say the country needs change. See? So, what do you think? I want to hear what you think. Do you think the country is running great or the country needs some change? So go to voiceofjamaica.com. On the right side, if you're on a computer, you'll see the poll. So you can thumbs up or thumbs down. If you're on the phone, you just scroll all the way up until you see the voting section. Right? And you can let me know how you feel regarding how the country is being run. See? So, let us talk about a little bit about traffic tickets. All right, let us shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about traffic tickets. So, we have Yeah, now it gone to 16 for real. The results have changed since that page was reloaded. So let's talk about traffic tickets, and I can't even say what really think about traffic tickets. But nonetheless, we have criminal processes being issued by a constable stating that you violate the law, you have committed an offense, right? And I don't think many people realize that an offense, again, is a criminal offense. It is not just an offense. You can literally go to jail. And anything that allows for jail time is a criminal matter. Civil matters do not go to jail. Let me say that again. Civil matters do not have jail options. Right? So, the question is, how can you have a criminal matter and you are now given the option to pay or go to the court to contest it? In criminal law, a so-called accused, someone who is accused of a crime, they don't get a piece of paper to say, hey, come to court if you don't agree with me. You are brought in front of a judge, or you are held in lockup until you can be brought in front of a judge. So how comes if you run a red light, or if you run a stop sign, or if you are speeding, you are given a piece of paper claiming that you can pay it and them stop bother you, or you can go to court? How comes if you claim that I violated the law by committing an offense, how is it possible now that I can exonerate myself with payment? Is that really a crime then? Exactly. How can I buy my way out if you are saying that I committed an offense? How does that make sense? But in terms of subject matter jurisdiction, it makes sense in commerce. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. In commerce, right, if you steal, use an example, right? If you have a chopper and them catch the chopper, oftentimes them not get a lot of years, right? Some of them do, some of them don't. If you are in government, oftentimes you get a very low slap on the wrist, couple years, 2 to 4 years, for millions of dollars. For somebody on the street, you get catch 10, 20, 30, 40 life, right? So again, the penalties are not equal across the scale. It depends on where you are at in society. In many cases, who is your lawyer and so forth. But the question is, how can we have someone being called a criminal, someone who may have admitted to doing something, and yet still you are now given the opportunity to discharge the debt? Because that's what it is, right? And so you violate the law. So here you have a commercial instrument and you have the opportunity to discharge the charge and be exonerated. Doesn't that seem like quackery? Because how can you have a crime and you're calling someone a potential criminal, but yet still there is no jail time mandatory, right? There is no trial mandatory. So that means that there are two different branches of criminal law. And if there are two different branches, where does the law says that? And the answer is nowhere in the law does it state that You have two separate types of law. It is only when we start talking about common law and we start talking about this lower statutory law. The Constitution don't mention nothing about that. It's a crime. Crime, period. So if something is considered a crime, you have all of those rights, all of those protections, all of those guarantees. It does not distinguish whether or not it's a small crime or a big crime. A crime is a crime. And to be a crime, you need to have evidence to support all three elements. Mens rea, actus reus, corpus delicti. You see? Them not even speak English. Latin. So, you need to have a guilty mind. But guess what? If you don't incriminate yourself by talking, they can almost never prove a guilty mind. But guess what? The first thing they're going to say is, well, we want to call you up as a witness. We want to hear your account of what happened. That is a violation of the constitutional protection of you should not. You are protected from incriminating yourself. So anything you say or do can be used against you. So how can you be called upon the stand to testify against yourself? It is not in defense. Your testimony is also being used by the prosecution. So if that is the case, that is self-incrimination. That is now tainted evidence, tainted testimony. It cannot be used. It is from a poisonous tree. But many people don't know this. So now, you cannot prove mens rea in many cases if someone doesn't testify. Right? Number 2, actus reus, the guilty act. If I was speeding, how can you prove that I was speeding? What evidence do you have? Oh, we have the speed detection device, and it said this, it said that. Okay. Is that your evidence? Where is the evidence to show that I was speeding? Because we don't have body cam. None of them now wear body cam. So how come you're going to say, me did I speed and I know somebody with the side of me or somebody in front of me or somebody past me, somebody. How do I even know that device is calibrated? How do I know you are certified to use that device? How do I know that that device was not malfunctioning at the time? Right? A lot of those questions people don't know how to ask or what to ask or whether or not to ask them. So the guilty act, actus reus, has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Was it you who are implicated in the so-called charge? And if so, produce the evidence. All of these things are evidence-based. It is not based on so-called testimony alone. Because anybody can tell a lie. So now, they need evidence to show that you were speeding. And what evidence do they have? Do they have a picture? Do they have a video? Do they have any kind of admission? Where I say, boy, you know what's a meter speed, but sorry. If you don't have that, then what do you have? Thirdly, corpus delicti, the body of the crime. What evidence do you have that there was damage to person or property? Even by signing a so-called paperwork, it is only signing that you would show up to court. It is not an admission of guilt. So if them say them require you to sign the ticket, you should know what a restrictive endorsement is. Never sign in blank. Never just sign and give nobody nothing. You sign with a restriction in a capacity. Right? So now you need corpus delicti, the body of the crime. Something must have caused damage or death. It is not enough to say that, well, this individual was speeding in this vicinity. That is not corpus delicti. Your word alone is not enough to support evidence. You have to show the evidence of the damage or the death or something that caused distress. It cannot just be the word of the officer or the constable. So if those three elements cannot be met, you don't have a crime. You don't have an offense. You don't have a violation of law. And if you don't know these things and you just walk up in a court, you are wishing and hoping. You can't wish and hope and not go in a court. It does not work. You need to have specific knowledge, specific intention to go in there and to deliver. A lot of people complain. I saw a video. I'm going to make a response video to that video as well. I saw a lady complain that she has been to court. I think it was like 4 or 5 times already. And they won't dismiss the case. The officer showed up one time and then they reset the case because that is the first time the constable showed they did not have the trial at that time. They reset. And, you know, it is... You're there... Some people are wondering, like, why is this lady wasting her time? Why should not just pay the ticket? Again, if you don't know something, you're going to just be thinking basic. Right? Now, this lady also don't know anything about the law, because if she knew anything about criminal law or traffic law, you would realize that you can subpoena the constable. And if the constable doesn't show the first time, you can demand that the case be dismissed. Because there is warrant for prosecution. There is no witness. So if you don't have any witness, you can't even produce evidence. Because evidence from who? Right? So if the constable does not show, but again, you have to demand that the court issue a subpoena for the constable. The constable doesn't show. Now you have a reason for the court to move to dismiss the matter. Right? So if you don't know these things, you're going to be going in blindly. You're going to be wishing and hoping. You're going to be wasting your time. You're going to be paying money, traveling back and forth to and from court. You have to learn the basics, how you move the court. And once you learn the basics, and again, you don't need to go in there and explain anything. You don't need to explain anything. Most of the time, you just need to ask a few questions and the case is dismissed. The case is done with. Most of the constables are not going to show up because they cannot justify the stop. They cannot justify giving you the ticket. And if they can't justify it, this is how they get sued. When a ticket is dismissed, that is the precursor, that is the foundation of a malicious prosecution lawsuit. So they are hoping that you don't come to court. They are hoping you just go pay it. They are hoping and hoping and hoping. But when you learn that you can actually start a lawsuit, a tort claim. It doesn't touch on the surface. Big up yourself, raw. Lawful. Always. When you realize that these endeavors are actually profitable, that you can now sue the constable, you can now sue the state for malicious prosecution, the tables slowly begin to turn. You soon see change, you know. You soon see change start rapidly happening in Jamaica. Because the small tips I give on TikTok every so often, and for those who actually come to class, they are making progress. I may not highlight everyone on here because I don't want to blow up everybody's business. But there is progress being made. When you hear the Supreme Court and the parish courts talking about people needs to know their rights and people need to know the law. Over the past 60 years, why you haven't been telling people that before? You send so much people to jail, you send so much people to go pay a ticket. You know, you do all of this in the past 60 years. All of a sudden, after people start learn, say, them can sue the crap out of government. Now, say people supposed to know them rights. Them supposed to know what law is applicable to the case. All of a sudden, they are ready to say, yeah man, it is true, you're supposed to know your rights, you're supposed to know the law, you're supposed to know what is applicable to your case, you're supposed to know that you don't have to plead right away. Really, you big up yourself. Lawful, always. So, you can't play dumb in this. You know, when you're on one side and things are going good, everybody's ignorant. You're fine. You don't want to do anything. But once people start finding out, say, yo, you know what, say, I'm not over here so alone. We have to stay. We can actually go over the fence over here so, and some mango tree over the other side we can go reap. At that time, I try to shake up your folly grounds. Too late. Too late. Again, when you actually have crime, when you actually have activities that are against the rights and the the property of people, where people are getting damaged, right? The police have a legitimate purpose that is unquestionable, right? But when you go out of your way, if you go mess with regular everyday people who are go about them private business, who no want have nothing to do with government, no want have no interaction, them no want get interview on the side of the road. Them no want come on your station, you set up station on the side of the road that interview people, random 1-1. Nobody wants that. My driver was given a ticket by an inspector off duty and he took him to the station. You see, all them something there. An inspector cannot engage with the public. They don't have the authority. The Constabulary Force Act only grants constables that authority. And if it is not a constable, it is unlawful. That inspector can also get investigated and charged. You don't have a constable power of arrest to have been instituting a stop or to be locking up somebody for anything. That is supposed to be strictly for a constable. They even use traffic warrants to trap some people in traffic matters. That's true. Or some people, when you know say them have ticket, them get stopped. You hear say warrant out for them arrest. Oh, you know, say the system not show me this. Oh, you know, say the system say this, the system say that. And they run around people with this foolishness, right? A detective cannot issue no ticket. They don't have the power of arrest. It is a constable that is granted these powers. A detective needs a constable on site and they can direct the constable to go do things, but they don't have the authority to go do that unless they have a special operations, right? So when we talk about some of these basic things that we need to know, again, even if you know these things, that does not mean that you should get up and talk about, well, you know, me have my rights and you're not supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do that. No. If you're going to say anything, you just ask questions. Right? What law do you suspect me of breaking? And you wait for the answer. It still doesn't matter, you know. It still does not matter. Because at the end of the day, unless there is an actual crime, there's evidence of a crime, the police don't have no authority to stop people on the road. They will tell you anything, you know. A constable will tell you anything. Well, sir, under the Road Traffic Act, we are stopping to check your documents. We want to ensure that you have insurance. We have to... All right. For those of you who are here, I'm going to drop a gem. I'm going to drop a gem. If you're ready, drop a 1 in the chat. So I know you're not just agent there. Because them keep on a report the live. I go drop a gem. Because you see, traffic matters almost guarantee those who are law abiding. The so-called traffic laws almost guarantee you have an interaction with the police. Right? All right. So let us talk about something interesting here. If we have a traffic matter, you're coming down the street and you come around the corner. I'm going to use an example from a real life story. You come around a corner, constable hold up him and, hey, over there, so. And them say, sir, you have your fog lights on. That is in violation of the Road Traffic Act, blah, blah, blah. The condition don't seem like a fog lamp is required or necessary. So, we're going to issue you a ticket. Now, you get a ticket for a fog lamp, right? Your fog lamp is on the car. And eagle eyes, lawful, always. And now you're wondering, yes, me know that the law exists for the fog lamp, but is this lawful? Was that a lawful issuance of a ticket? And you say, boy, at evening still in my lights on because it is getting dark. But was this stop lawful? Let us take something into account, right? Remember, most of the time that a ticket is issued, there is no other evidence that the constable is citing. Let me say that again. Most of the time a ticket is issued, there is no evidence to support that ticket. So a couple of things here. Circumstantial evidence. Where was the constable standing at the time he claimed that you break the law? Because a ticket is stating that you break the law. That's why you were issued the ticket, right? So the constable is standing around the corner. Can the constable see around the corner to know whether or not a fog lamp is required? How far can a constable see to determine whether or not a fog lamp is required on the road? And does the constable have the perspective view from inside the car to know whether or not the fog lamp is required? The answer to those two questions is obviously no. None of us as humans can look round a corner. So unless the constable has some other additional abilities, there is no way for a constable to determine the visibility that is required to be using a fog lamp unless he was in the car or unless he was traveling. Even if he was traveling behind the car, he cannot tell whether the visibility is low or requires the fog lamp to be on. All right, let's say it was a stretch. We're gonna change the scenario now. Him can't see around corner, so him can't win the case there. Because he would be required to prove how he knows that the conditions around the corner does not require a fog lamp. And did he go around there and check? That would be confirmed on cross-examination. Anyways, let us change the scenario. We have a stretch of a road. And the constable, exactly, the constable is at the end of that road, right? Let's say the constable is about a mile down the road. You're traveling down and you have your fog lamp on. The same principle applies. The constable is claiming that the conditions do not require a fog lamp to be on. It does not seem to be low visibility or smoke or dust or anything. How far can a constable see? That is the first question. Second question, how do you determine what the driver or the traveler in the car can see? If you are not traveling down the road and actually have a view of where the traveler is coming from, how can you determine if a fog lamp is necessary? Especially if it is evening time and it's getting closer to dark where people have their lights on. How do you know for sure? And if you don't know, how can you give a ticket based on assumption and presumption? The ticket cannot stand. Even if it is daytime, let's say it is daytime, right? And the constable say, well, you're not supposed to have your fog lamp on. Blah, 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 blah. Again, they are considering this a crime. Exactly. Anything could have obstructed the driver's or the traveler's vision. And therefore, only the traveler or the driver can determine visibility and whether or not the fog lamp is required. Okay. Now, all of these things that are written on a ticket is considered to be a crime. It is considered an offense. An offense is a criminal offense, and a criminal offense is a crime. We already covered that many times. Go look in our Black's Law Dictionary, or go looking at the Bouvier's Law Dictionary. An offense is a crime. Now, remember, it does not matter if it is a so-called petty traffic matter or if it is an actual bigger occurrence of something or whatever. A crime is a crime is a crime. So, you have to prove all the elements that make up a crime. What about daytime? Is there? Let's go back to daytime. How, again, the same question. How can the constable determine whether or not the individual who is operating the car have low visibility or whether or not he needs the fog lamp? If you are not a passenger in the car, or you are not, again, if you are the driver, you can't take it yourself. But how can a constable standing on the side of the road determine what is visible or what is appropriate for someone in a moving car? You standing up can never be the same vision, the same visibility as someone in a moving car. Never. Even if it's daytime, let's say it is daytime, right? And you have a fog lamp on. The question is that a crime? Again, an offense is a crime. Is it a crime to have your fog lamps on? It can never amount to be a crime because, again, you need actus reus, the guilty act. Are you saying I intentionally wanted to break the law by using a feature of the car? Prove it. Number 2, mens rea. Guilty mind. Prove it. I am not going to testify against myself. I invoke the constitutional protection of due process. Number 3, body of the crime. Show me the evidence that something happened that caused damage or death to someone else. I am not going to say that all tickets are invalid, But you better have a damn good reason to give a ticket. Because if it is properly challenged, I don't see any of them standing. Any constable who come under cross-examination and for me watch. Get ready. You see? Many people don't even know how to properly cross-examine. Many people don't know the questions to ask. Many people don't know what a preliminary objection is. You see? I'm going to give you the gem that I was talking about. That wasn't the gem. That was just extra. Let us talk about the gem. A constable issues a ticket, right? If any of you have a ticket, take out the ticket when you get a chance and look at it. You don't have to read the whole light. I know say you don't like read, right? Go down to the bottom portion where you have the constable information. Most likely, you will see something like Constable Brown, D. Brown, M. Brown, something of a similar nature. Right? Anybody have a ticket can confirm? What does the name of the officer on the ticket say? That is the question. Anybody have a ticket? They want to drop in the comments. All right. So, let me ask you a question. Do you know of anyone? All right, see one the A grade. Do you know of anyone who have a legal name that is one letter? Here we have a first initial and a last name. The question is that lawful? All right, let me qualify what I'm asking. Is there somewhere in law that says that public agents or public servants are allowed to use aliases when they are occupying public office? Meaning, can you use an alias, a nickname, in place of your lawful name? And the answer is no. The answer is no. Well, he might call himself Bro God, but he does not use that on official documents. Right? So now the question is, remember I say no. If I ever catch one of them under cross-examination, I would like to see him wiggle out of it. So if there is no law or regulation that allows you to use an alias or a legal continuation of your actual name, who signed this ticket? Who signed the ticket claiming that it is an information criminal sheet? I would like to see who is called A grade. Can I see your ID, please? Because it has to match the name that is on the ticket. Yes, I don't want to say too much, you know. But what we're going to do today is what is called a chain of custody. What does that mean? A chain of custody. It means that one piece of fact, once it goes through different stages, you're supposed to be able to track that fact all the way to the end. So if someone say you do something, them have to trace it back. If you say, yes, this was done, and then this was done resulting in this. So the fact cannot change. The circumstances may change, but the facts do not change from end to end. Okay? Let me qualify why I say on no ticket can a constable use an alias. Want to remember something called the Constabulary Force Act? Yeah man, thank you. Big up yourself. Who remember something called the Constabulary Force Act? It's a summons. The Constabulary Force Act gives us the framework again, the framework on what the constable is supposed to be doing. Right? You will hear them say it a lot of times, you know. Under the Constabulary Force Act, we are stopping you to search for dangerous drugs and things. Right? Under the Constabulary Force Act, blah, blah, blah. Constabulary Force Act Section 18. And they go on and on about it. What they won't talk about is, I think is what, Section 4? It talks about their oath. The constabulary oath that every constable must take. TikTok police, lawful, always welcome. Why do I bring up the oath again? The oath is an important document. I told you I'm going to qualify what I said earlier. The oath is the document that shows who is being hired into the constabulary force, who is being commissioned, who is getting public office. If that document says A grade, then by all means, he can go ahead and use that because that is what he signed to as his name. But if his oath of office says Andrew Gray or Arthur Gray or Adrian Gray, he has now committed malfeasance of office. You are now impersonating an office by using an alias and not your lawful name that you signed public office with. So you can't use alias. You have to use the name that is on your oath of office. So, this is why I talk about the oath before. For those of you, who were a part of that conversation, the oath is important. So, if you signed as an imposter of office, that ticket cannot be valid. So let me ask you a question again. Have you gotten a ticket that shows a constable's full name? Do you think that's air you're breathing? So, I then wake up the answers, you know. It's not me. There are some people who just want to be left alone. But you see, when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. You bring that up in any court case and you see what happens. Bring it up in any court case and see what happens. Again, I can't tell you what to do. But it is easy to ask questions than to prove something. You are not there to prove nothing. If you are asked, well, sir, were you out there that day? Were you this, were you that? Respectfully, Your Honor, I am not the one on trial here. It is the accuser who must produce the evidence to support the charge. Why didn't he put my first initial and last name on the ticket? Exactly. If we're all out here using fictitious names, why are you putting my full name on the ticket? Because you're one of them on it. You see? They are trying to hide behind a lot of these things. And it is because, like me say, a lot of these things you can't really think about when you deal with hand-to-mouth. You try to worry about work tomorrow, you know, what kind of bills you have to pay, this, that, and whatever. You know, I really sit down and think about them something here. But you see, them love come from my live, come report the live, report the live, report the live. So you see, every time they report the live, I am going to start dropping the gems. Now I go start opening up the piggy bank. Because it does not stop there. For those of you who think it was convenient to just go pay the ticket. See? Once you pay the ticket, you have no more claim under the Constitution. The only way you can pay a ticket and still maintain your rights is if you go to court on the day that is still on the ticket after you've paid. And if you already paid and you get the ticket dismissed, you can now demand a refund. Right? So you kind of kill two birds with one stone, but me know some people don't trust the government. So again, that is an option. Right? You see, everybody can pretend, you know. But it always come a day when the truth is revealed. People start seeing things that were not visible before. So it is never that. Oh, there's one thing though. The truth is the only constant. Let me say that again. It's going to take a while to ring and make sense. But the truth is the only unchangeable thing around us. Everything else but the truth changes. It is going to make sense to you, maybe not today. It sounds okay, you know, it sounds like it makes sense. But just remember that it is going to change things in your mind. It is going to change how you view society. And you're going to start deciphering a lot more things when you realize that. So you see, anything that is changing, that means that it is not the truth. It was not the truth to begin with. Anything that changes is not the truth. You can't have truth upgrade. It no works so. A tree is always going to be a tree. Mango tree is always a mango tree. Apple tree is always an apple tree. Can't change it. Doesn't pay the ticket, vacate the ticket and court presence. No, it does not. You can still challenge it because you are paying under duress. Meaning, because if you don't pay the ticket and something happens where you can't make it to court, you can now end up on a warrant list. So it is a precautionary defense. It is not necessarily an admission of guilt. And you can do that restrictively. Right? Yeah, man, foot soldier, big up yourself same way. You can always do actions conditionally or restrictively. You don't have to just do things so and that's it. There are many conditions within society. Right? So, when we talk about the Constitution and we talk about these other different things, on how these actions by government agents affects us in society, whether it be customs, whether it be the police, whether it be politics, whatever it is, you still need the background knowledge. You cannot always look at things as you see them, because often what you see is not what you get. Often what you see is after the fact. You're seeing the result of actions that were taken. So it is up to you now to gain the insight and go look at some of these things and make sense of it. Some of it, I show you the door, right? I let you know that that is not the only way out. That is not the only option you have. That is not the only consideration you need to make or you can make. And then when you see some of these things, then you're able to make better decisions, right? So when I teach you some of these things on how to look at a ticket and what to look for and why, it is not necessarily to tell you to go do anything. It is just options that are there that you can use to your advantage if you deem fit or necessary, right? Just remember, whenever somebody is charged with a crime, it is always the burden of the accuser to provide the evidence to support the charge. It is not you to answer questions. In every country, the Constitution protects you from self-incrimination, including being a witness. Because when they call you on the witness stand, or if they try to, that is exactly what the Constitution is talking about. You cannot be a witness against yourself. If someone is accusing you of something, why would you help them? Why would you help them? So when we tell them all the time, say, don't argue with the officer on the side of the road. It is not because I say, boy, me no want you help them, or me no want them this, or me no want them that. It is because it don't help you. You can only look out for yourself. You can't look out for anybody else. You have to look out for yourself and your safety and your protection. So if you do that, it don't make sense. I would say 90% of the time you talk to a constable, it does not help you. The 10% where they might say, all right, we just do a check. You can go on. It doesn't matter whether you talk or not. You just be polite. You say, all right, good evening, good night. How can I help you? And them ask you what they want and whatever, and you give it to them and you be along your way. Right? So you don't argue on the side of the road, you don't really have prolonged conversation. But yes, when you go to court, that is your time to shine. Because them not have no authority in a court. As a matter of fact, they are brought down to the gutter. You can ask them anything where you want. And some of these things like, what is your proper name? And I tell them proper name. So they say, okay, is your proper name on the ticket? No. Okay. Your Honor, I move to dismiss this ticket for want of prosecution. There is no witness here to support the charge. You can't use alias on a ticket when you have a lawful name. You demand the ticket be dismissed right away. You don't even need to continue. Your Honor, whose name is this on this ticket? Him stand up and say, sir, can we see your ID, please? Does this match? No. Your Honor, I'd like to move to dismiss this ticket. There is no witness to support the charge. This man, whatever his name is not the name that is on the ticket. Exactly. It's not the same. It's not the same name. So, and that is only one way you can go about that. Right? But if you don't form a defense, if you don't try to learn some of these things, you will always be at the mercy of those who know. You won't hear these things from an attorney, by the way. As a matter of fact, I heard 2 people now come back and tell me that there are attorneys out there using my strategies and not giving me credit. But guess what? I am not here for the clout. I don't care who uses it. Whatever I teach here, I mean, this is the public, right? My page is open to everyone. So I don't really care who use the material or use the information. It's just that be careful, right? If you find information useful, I'm all for that. If you want to learn more, if you want to learn better, you go and you join voiceofjamaica.com. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do another. The law gave him the right to violate the law. Okay. Very bold statement. But hey, there's one thing you cannot fix, and it is stupidity. Right? So on voiceofjamaica.com, we were talking about this earlier. We have a poll. We have a voting poll. Right? And the question is, if you're on a cell phone, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you will see these options here where it says Jamaicans. Does Jamaica need change? Right? And you can vote yes or no. So far, we have 16 votes. So, we have 3 people that say Jamaica don't need no change. Then vote yes. No, then vote. Oh, it says, the question is, as a Jamaican, are you comfortable with the way the country is run? Right? 3 people say yes, and 13 people say no. Right? So, obviously, this is not a significant number yet, but for those who are voting, they obviously feel that there is something wrong with the way the country is being run. So, if you want to cast your vote, just go to voiceofjamaica.com. You don't need to sign in, you don't need an account, you don't need nothing. It is actually public. So you can go and cast your vote and let me know what you think, whether or not you think the country is being run properly, or if you think that the country needs change, right? And that is something free that you can do. So, what was this question? The name can be different, but what if the TRN is the same? It doesn't seem like you understand what we're saying here. We're talking about the name of the constable. The constable's TRN has nothing to do with a ticket. So the constable's full name has to be on the ticket. It cannot be an alias. That's what we were saying earlier. Where is it posted? voiceofjamaica.com. That's the website. Can vote me into power? No, I do not want any political affiliations. You know, I don't mind being an advisor or somebody, you know, like that, but I don't want any kind of government office. Got charged because the officer said I was using my phone while driving. Ask them to prove it. That's all you need to do when you go to court. Ask the officer to present the evidence to support the fact that he claims that you had the phone while you were traveling. Right? That's all you need to do. Again, if you go in there answering questions, like the judge would say, well, sir, what were you doing that evening? Or what happened really? Judge, respectfully, I am going to claim my constitutional protection of freedom from self-incrimination. I am not going to testify against myself. Whatever the constable is going to testify to, he needs to provide evidence to support that. Right? If we can't prove what then? Can't prove what? Okay. So, you don't testify against yourself. That is actually unlawful. Prove the lion police. It is actually unlawful to testify against yourself. So you should not be testifying. You should not be answering any questions in court. All you need to say is section 16, what was it, 16 6F. Let's see. 16. Yep, 16.6F of the Constitution says, every person charged with a criminal offense shall not be compelled to testify against himself or to make any statement amounting to a confession or admission of guilt. End quote. And except with his own consent, not be tried in his absence. So, do you have the LBB? I don't know what that is. So, even if it's a judge asking you questions about situational things, you don't have any obligation to answer that. You invoke your constitutional protection, not constitutional right. Constitutional protection. You can do this with any ticket whatsoever. You can go in there and you ask the questions. You are not the one that is claiming anything. You are not bringing the claim. The Constitution, Order in Council 1962, Jamaica Constitution, Section 16.6F, as in Frank. That is your constitutional protection from self-incrimination. That way, you don't go in there talking. The same thing on the side of the road. If the constable is claiming that he witnessed an offense, you have protection from self-incrimination. I can't say too much right now. There is another section about that. But 16.6F protects you from self-incrimination. Right? TKG, all right, no problem. But remember, I cannot give you legal advice. I cannot tell you what to do. I can only say what I would do in certain situations. Where can we find these laws online? A matter of fact, let us talk about that a little bit before I go, because we are running out of time. So, let us go back to our website, voiceofjamaica.com. This is the website, right? So the front page looks like. If you go to the menu, go to downloads, so scroll up. If you go to downloads and you go to free files, right? If you're on a phone, you have 3 dots on the top left of the site, right? Go to free docs, you scroll down, and here I place a link. These documents are not hosted on the website, these 2 documents, right? You have a link to the Constitution and a link to the constitutional amendment, which is the Charter of Fundamental Rights, right? So you want to go to the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. You click on that and it will open up the JA Parliament website that goes to this document. And you just scroll down to section 16, 14, 15, 15, and oh, I'm past 16 already. 16, wait. Oh, 16. Protection of the right to due process, right? That is the entire section. And let me zoom it in a little bit so we can see, right? So we have 16. Where is 6 there? 5. Past 6. 16, 6. See it there? Every person charged with a criminal offense shall be informed as soon as reasonably practicable in the language which he understands of the nature of the offense charged. So, section F, every person charged with a criminal offense shall, F, what F say? not be compelled, not be forced to testify against himself or to make any statement amounting to a confession or admission of guilt. Right? So, this is a violation of the Constitution if the court is forcing you to answer questions when the police is the one bringing the charge. When you go into court and the judge keep on and tell you guilty or not guilty, guilty or not guilty, you are being forced to testify against yourself. I'm not going to go further into that. The first statement shown, 16.6, every person charged with a criminal offense shall. So 16.6 is a long section. 16.6 has A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? And you have all of these sections. Is it in that little yellow book? Well, I'm not sure what you mean, but if it's the Jamaica Constitution, most likely it has these sections in it. Right? But if you want it from online, you can go to voiceofjamaica.com, go to downloads and go to free docs. It's the two first documents at the top. Right? That part that says everyone has they. Let us see what you are talking about. Oh, it says every person charged with a criminal offense shall be presumed innocent until he is proved guilty or has pled guilty. 16.5. Right? So when you talk about guilty or not guilty, you cite this to the judge. Constitution section 16.5 states that every person is presumed innocent. So why am I pleading? Where in law does it say I have to plead? (16.6a). What about it? Yeah, the entire 16, section 16, the entire thing is due process. These are things that have to be afforded to you according to law, right? But again, you have to read that on your own. I'm not going to go through all of that on the live, but it is there. Those documents are there. You can go on japarliament.gov.jm, right? And you go under the document section and you can find a lot of these. A lot of the acts of parliament that were passed are there. You can also go to the Ministry of Justice website and they also have some archive of some of the laws that were passed. But at the end of the day, it is not to go through every single law or go through every single act. It is good to skim through some of them, but some of them, they don't apply. They don't apply to you. You don't want to waste your time going and reading all of these different things unless it touches some part of your life, right? So the whole point of some of these documents is for your protection or to see if they violate the law. Right, if there is a breach. If there is a breach, then you should be able to spot it. So, if for a lot of times they will list an offense on the ticket, right? Or they list a description on the ticket. That is not enough. You know, there's a video on my page where I show you how to go about, you know, identifying the items on the ticket, how to scrutinize them and so forth. So, it is up to you how you want to, what angle you want to take when dealing with these tickets. There are so many ways to attack these tickets. It's unbelievable, right? But at the end of the day, it is up to you what you choose to do and how you choose to, you know, engage with the matter. But by and large, the tickets, if you know what you're doing, they can't survive. They can't survive none at all. You just have to know what to say. You said if the officer only has his first initial with their last name, you can dismiss it. No, I didn't say that. I said you can demand that the judge dismiss the matter. For want of prosecution, there is no witness. The individual that is listed on the ticket does not have a lawful name. That is not the name of a public official or a constable. If that is not his real name, then the ticket cannot stand. That's putting a big target on our backs. What does that mean? Police try to intimidate the public with garbage most of the time. Hey, that's true. They will blatantly say they don't know the law. They are not there to tell you about the law. A ticket is a budgetary projection with intent. Hence, all tickets within the charge fine is not within the Constitution. How can you have a target if we have 10, 15 people going into the court and saying, this is an invalid ticket, we don't have a valid name on this ticket of the constable that issued the ticket? That is a fact. What am I going to do? Am I going to run down everybody who come in there with that? Then can't stop the floodgates that are going to be opened. I didn't open it. I certainly did not open it. They are the ones doing it. Here's the question I asked the last time. When someone breaks the law, what is supposed to happen? Please be careful. Am I saying something that is secret? What have I said that you cannot see for yourself? What secret am I revealing? Because remember, a secret is something that is hidden, something that cannot be accessed normally. I am literally asking you to look at your ticket, and I am not telling you to go do anything. I says it's up to you whether or not you think anything I am saying makes sense. And it is up to you if you want to go in there and say any of that. If someone is breaking the law, it does not matter what level of society you think you are at. If someone is breaking the law, what should happen to them? Shouldn't they face the consequences of the law? Shouldn't they be tried? Shouldn't they be questioned? Shouldn't they be given the opportunity to defend themselves? It doesn't matter who you are, police, politician, or whatever. Don't you see all of them going through the court system? Don't you see all of them trying to do things? I am not here to instill fear. Guess what? All of us have an expiration date. Me not go out there and seek trouble. But what? If one day comes where I have to go, I just go. It's that simple. Regardless of what they think, they, whoever they are, the truth will always prevail. And it is not just me who have figured out any of this. It is not just me who is saying any of this. Right? The attorneys use a lot of different tactics. There are people out there who read on their own and go in their own tactics. They cannot stop people from coming up with remedies on how to deal with this situation. Look how much people are on the live now. Right? There was over 50 odd people at one point. Some people get it, some people don't. Some people don't need it. Some people don't have a ticket. Why would I be fearful of anything? I am not giving you anything that will get you into trouble, nor give you anything that is unlawful. Everything I say is backed up with facts and evidence. So, me not afraid. Yeah, again, they always do what they want to do anyways. The only difference now is a lot more people know exactly what to do when the time comes. Okay? Exactly. Fear is for the unlawful. Me not run around and talk about what if, suppose, them can do this, them can do that. They do it all the time. Imagine, they do this to people who don't know nothing at all. Nothing at all. Them running from people, kick off people door, search up people house. Some people even get unalive in the process and they have not done anything. Some of them, wrong identity. So, if that a go on, regardless of what me know, what me I worry about? What me I go worry about? It don't make any sense. Fear itself is only going to stop progress. So, I not depend that. I not depend the fear mongering mentality. Right? Yes, I am careful. Me not go out there, I stand up in the street and I hold up sign, I say go do this and go do that. It's still up to you. You don't have to do anything I say. Exactly. Ignorance of the law is certainly not bliss. It will certainly cost you. See? So, I should go do civil law. Why? Don't worry yourself. There's always issues within society to take care of. But fear is not one of them. Civil law, again, I am not giving anyone advice. I am simply, I guess you can say, educating. So, I am not here to help any particular situation. I can only talk about generally what the law says and, fictional situations and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is really, I would say most law is interchangeable, right? As far as the circumstances relating to law. Circumstances related to law are generally the same when you're learning, right? You don't study the entire body of law. You only study the section that applies to you first. Once you resolve your situation, then you start exploring into other areas of law or other areas of that body of law or that subject matter of law. So you get a better overall understanding. But generally speaking, the law isn't necessarily difficult. It's just that anything you start, it takes more effort to get into it and to comprehend the basics. But once you get the basic foundation, it is generally easy to navigate the law and get into different aspects. Right. It does open up a floodgate to learn, and it can become a little bit addicting. But the other important thing is you don't learn to prove anything to anyone. You actually learn to help yourself, to prepare and protect yourself and your property and your family and so forth. Some people do it for different things. If you're doing it privately, it's completely different than if you're doing it for profit. And that is where the government is going to be on your back if you start doing it for profit. Right? So, again, just be careful out there. I cannot take any questions tonight because I have to run shortly. However, I'll try to be back online probably Friday or sometime on the weekend, and we can go over some more details. So, big up on yourself, stay safe, lawful, always.